I'm Chad Rhodes, and this is Cameo. Today we are joined by Thomas Allen Harris and Deb Willis, the director and producer of Through a Lens Darkly. Hi, welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
So how did you go into venturing to a project like this?
I known Thomas for about 20 years, and I was interested in exploring a book project and making it a visual experience. The book project was entitled Reflections in Black, A History of Black Photographers, 1840 to the Present. As a student at George Mason University, that was one of my projects I worked on during the time I was here. As a result, an exhibition was developed, a publication, and I was interested in extending the project, and I asked Thomas if he would be interested as a filmmaker to make the images come alive.
And yeah, Deb and I have been friends, and her work has inspired me. You know, I've been making films for about 25 years, and a lot of my films deal with the issue of the family album and looking at it and taking it apart from a variety of different standpoints, from the diasporic standpoint, from the standpoint of home movies, and also from the standpoint of LGBT kinds of issues as well.
Oh, okay. So for this particular project, it was way more important to focus on the historical aspect.
It's a mix. It has historical as well as contemporary artists. So I think the the importance of the project was to expand the visual experience of black photographers, to make one know, make the community know the the expanse of this history. We have a lack and a gap in the history of photography, and I thought at the time when I was an undergraduate student and eventually a grad student, to find ways to enhance the history. And by doing so, I researched a number of black photographers who were working in this country, as well as in the Caribbean and a few in Africa. I wanted to have a different narrative that has been part of the narrative of African American history, and to show families as well as joy as well as protests.
And for me, the challenge was how to return this groundbreaking historical book into a movie. And so many of the contemporary photographers who were in the book, I didn't want them to be bunched up at the end of the film. You know, if we follow the straight historical narrative, and then the older photographers who were not living to be in the front. You know, and there was also a different kind of image. You know, daguerreotypes, which were very still images, and images at the beginning of history were much rarer than they are now. And so I was trying to figure out how to think about another way of approaching history through the image. And so I thought, well, focus on photographers' stories that whose work is inspired or tackles history, such as Carrie Mae Weems or Lorna Simpson, my brother Lyle Ashton Harris, and Hank Willis Thomas and Renee Cox, and a bunch of photographers, Clarissa Sly, look at historical moments and through the lens of their photographic and artistic practice. And so, so we tried to kind of weave that narrative in so that the film goes between a kind of historical progression, but also disrupts history. Because when we look at a historical moment, just by looking at it from a particular vantage point, whether it's from the vantage point of being African American or being a woman or being an LGBT person, you in some ways change history. And so I was interested in how, through this film, history can be changed, building on Deb's work. And I was also interested in how we look at images, and to create a new way of thinking about filmically interpreting an image. And so that was really important as well.
Okay. In making this film, how distorted did you find the image of black people?
Well, you know, I think that for me, it was really important to include images, dominant images of African Americans that were existing at the same time as the images of black photographers that Deb identified, to talk about what they were, the background against which they were working, so that you had black photographers who were taking pictures of black families and affirmations of black life, but most of the images that were out there were negative images that really somehow the target was to destroy ideas of African Americans as citizens, as valuable contributors to the country, to communities, and so those images were difficult images to look at, but I thought it was really important to put them in so that you knew that the war of images that we have today went all the way back to, in some ways, predates photography as well, but was certainly there at the beginning of photography, and it really jumped and spiked right after the end of the Civil War, when African Americans had gained their freedom.
Yeah, because in watching the film, I did notice that there was a transition, and they go from literally the fields to like being these people that were like robbing places and stuff like that. Was it important to kind of just like show how the like image of black people was used to paint them in a negative light?
You know, I think that sometimes images can be used propagandistically, and so it's really important to show how the civil rights movement deals with this issue of representation, one person, one vote, but there's also the issue of representation, how one is represented within popular culture defines how one is treated within a culture. And so that was really important. But you know, I think the main focus has always been the hidden images that affirmed our humanity and our citizenship, which Deb, uncovered.
So in curating these photos, you did find like there were, I'm not sure if there were black photographers or not, but they were like taking back this image of the black figure and trying to represent them in a different light. Was that something that you really wanted to show in this film?
I wanted to show representative images of black families and a black life, from families going to church to families who who visited photographic studios, where they wanted to share their humanity and their dignity in terms of looking into the camera. And so education was important in terms of the experience of black people after emancipation. So there were a number of land-grant colleges that were placed within strategic areas in the South where gave opportunities for black people to attend school. And those are the photographs that I wanted to include in the book, based on this history that was lacking of African American photographers.
So what's next for you guys for this film, or just even in your own careers?
Many things. So I'm really excited. I am working on a conference it's called Black Portraitures 2, and it's restaging history, and I invited over 200 writers and artists to expand upon the notion of what it means to be black in not only America, but have the image of blacks throughout the world and have a conversation about it. And so it's a broad discussion about history and contemporary images. I'm really excited also that I'm working on a book of my photographs, and the book is entitled Beautiful. And so when one says beautiful, there's this light that comes out of it, and it's the experience of not looking at identifying what is beautiful, but the experience of what is beautiful, to see a shadow on a table, to see a mother hold her child, or to see, just that kind of range. So I'm looking at the idea of beauty and exploring that.
Part of the film involved a transmedia project called Digital Diaspora Family Reunion, and that project was really rooted in the idea that a lot of vernacular images of African Americans in which we celebrated ourselves were in people's homes. And we knew that we had the professional photographers that Deb had identified, but we wanted to find images that were not necessarily discovered or seen in the film. And so I started touring with the Digital Diaspora Roadshow around 2009, and we found all these amazing images. Many of them were, the photographer was listed as anonymous, and some people, the photographer was listed, for some archives, the photographer was listed as a person who was part of that family. And so we're actually developing another project based on this research that we've been doing, and we interviewed about 1,000 people for Digital Diaspora, and not just African Americans, but all Americans. We wanted it to be inclusive. And so either a feature film is going to come out of that, or a TV show, because when we look at the family photograph, even though we're different, different races, different classes, different orientations, we see similar stories. And now we're at a place where the family photographic album is morphing into something else. Whether it's going into the Facebook or whether it's going into some other kind of digital space, we want to actually highlight the family photograph before the book of family photographs leaves us, and eventually migrates to libraries or to archives, and really focus on people who are doing interesting things and creative things around their family photographs. And so look for Digital Diaspora Family Reunion. And I have a couple of feature projects I'm working on. I'm working on a fictional film and Tears from Lagos, and I'm also working on another documentary that we developed with HBO, Property to Person.
I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming out and sitting down with us, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.